Welcome to BioFarm 2021. We're here today on the farm of Colm Flynn, Skerry's house farm, just outside Italian, County Kildare. And I'm going to be talking to Colm about his transition over the years towards a biological farming system. So, Colm, thanks for having us on the farm.
No bother.
And you might just give us a brief history to the farm and its transition, we'll say, from conventional to biological in the last number of years.
Thanks, Rob. This farm has been in tillage for hundreds and hundreds of years, and over the course of my lifetime here, I've noticed that it was gradually getting harder to farm certain elements of the farm in tillage. We had land running from a light sandy profile on the higher ground through here, which is a vein of brick clay, towards more moory ground down joining the Bournemouth above. We do a very wide range of soils, and this particular land that you're on here at the moment is particularly stubborn. It didn't like being ploughed, it didn't like any kind of moisture when it was being sown. It was mauly ground. So I had been looking at ways of finding a mechanism to try and rehabilitate this soil, find some mechanism that I could continue to grow cereals on this land. And I had looked at the demand for grass that came about when the milk quotas were left over, and I said I can grow grass commercially to support local dairy farmers and use that opportunity to try and see whether a grass sward would rehabilitate this heavy brick clay soil. And it was simple enough. I started off over there with 50 acres of grass put down. That worked very well for me. The price of grain was low, the demand for grass was high, so the return per acre was on par with cereals at the time, and at times even superior. And then I moved into this block of ground here, and based on what I'd learned over there, I decided I'd go with a multi-species sward here. Loved the idea of a multi-species sward. I think it's a fantastic way of building soil organic matter, soil biology. The different root penetration gives you more drainage, earthworms. There was a load of things I noticed on the original ground I wanted to advance here. And it was a look of fate or whatever that around that time the Danu project was being set up, and when I entered Danu, Dave Wallace asked me what's my kind of mission statement, and I said, listen Dave, I would love to see, can I use short-term lays to rehabilitate heavy stubborn ground like this with a view to min-till or zero-till. And in that process we set up this field here. It was the Greene book over there, which is the full Chazzock recommendations. Here's the same thing, only using a carbon source at the same time. Here, it's mineral balancing based on soil analysis and sap analysis. And over there, it's purely minerals and biological additives. So what we're doing is we looked at the soil profile, we looked at the soil mineral makeup, and what was a shock to me was the sheer volume of P and K and other minerals I had in the soil that wasn't available to the plant. And I said to myself, there's something wrong. And what I have learned is, in this particular field, is that the soil biology is building, and I'm getting very, very rewarding responses I didn't or wasn't aware of. During the drought, I noticed over there that the crop was inclined to burn up a bit, and yet over here it wasn't. And we were digging profile holes and looking at root penetration and looking at how the ground was behaving. And I had heard that ryegrasses were not good at making the transition to biological farming, and I found that is not technically correct. What I learned over there was that when you apply the nutrients to the top layer of the soil, The ryegrasses are bred to harness that energy up there in the upper zone, right? With the result that all the roots are concentrated there. Drought comes, you have no deep roots. Here, not alone was I getting the cover crops with roots going down 0.4, 0.5 a metre in the ground with the covers, the chicories and the plantains, but I also noticed that in this particular area here, I wasn't surface feeding the roots. And I noticed through digging that in that situation, the ryegrasses also chased down. So I was getting phenomenally deep rooting from ryegrasses here, along with the chicories and the plantains and the clover, right, here, that I wasn't getting over there. And that said to me, well, what's going on here is, one, I wasn't feeding the stuff in the upper layer of the soil. The nutrients were spread throughout the what I call the ploughed layer, the topsoil. And I felt, and I kind of got this feeling in myself that what I was doing over on the ground over there was, when I was putting the nutrients into the top of the ground, and the roots were all there, I was feeding them artificial fertiliser, and every time the plant basically wanted to have a drink, for the want of a better expression, right? Because all the artificial fertiliser was dissolved in that water, it had no choice but take it in as part of the dissolved water. Whereas over here it has a choice, because it's not actually taking in the nutrients itself. It's a symbiosis between the microbiology in the soil that has the fungi, all those things working within the rhizosphere or whatever on the roots. They are providing the energy for the plant, and the moisture, which is at a far deeper level, the grasses can access that. And as a hardcore tillage guy, right, I obviously have taken this opportunity and I've learned from it. And there's 50 acres over here behind me back that it has been in grass, and the cover is being grazed off it at the moment. And in the spring of the year, it's my intention now to direct drill a bean crop into that grass, and that will be almost zero till. And I know it's a leap of faith, but I think we've done enough with it. So that 50 acres of ground will be going into beans. The beans will be harvested off that ground, and I will go in immediately after that beans are harvested with a first wheat and a second wheat after that, and monitor the rehabilitation process to see what I need to tweak with regard to stay in the min-till situation or the no-till situation, ideally, you know what I mean? Now, I know that's 3 years in advance.
Yeah, no, and one of the other questions I suppose that'll be on people's minds, especially with the current trend in fertiliser prices, going back to your experiences in your transition towards some sort of biological or regenerative type farming system, how have you approached reducing maybe some of these inputs that are getting quite expensive at the moment?
Well, initially across the farm, we had a deep soil profile analysis of the minerals and everything like that, right? And I started to apply more nutrients based on the sap analysis I was getting from a combination of soil analysis and sap analysis, what the soil actually had and what the plant was actually able to get from that. Now, again, what I recognised was that there's a big difference between cereals and grass. Grass is, you want to stay in a vegetative state. You want it to grow up, you don't want it to head out, you want to stay grass. That's a completely different growing to cereals. Cereals, you're looking at vegetative growth, reproductive growth, vegetative growth, reproductive growth, vegetative growth, reproductive, all the whole way series from the time it's a seed right up through to the time it's harvested. And we've been drilling in into the information, drilling in harder into when these nutrients are to be applied and when they're being applied. And the first thing I realised, your advice was very, very pertinent at the time, was early childhood development in cereals, basically, right? And that was before the bullies arrive in the playground, get the little kids on the swings. And the same thing, before you start going with your NPK, the big guys, the bullies, get your trace elements kicked off on the plant at a young age. And I found that move to adjusting the nutrient balance in the plant based on sap analysis at a very early age, when the plant is very small, was the one that paid the biggest dividends, because I was able to load up the plant with the relevant minerals the hyena required at the time, right, based on whether it was a vegetative or a reproductive growth. And again, there's, you know, that timing is something that we have an awful lot of work still to do on. But that was one. That sap analysis was telling me also that my nitrogen levels were sufficient, and I reduced the inputs of nitrogen that I was applying based on, because I was watching the sap analysis. So the sap analysis, the kind of run was, the growth stage is here, sap analysis is back here, the intervention is there. So what you do is you do the sap analysis, based on the sap analysis you make the intervention, but you try and have that intervention coming in time that corresponds with that growth stage in the plant. So you look for where the growth stage is at, you sap analysis before to give you an opportunity to make the amendment in between. And then, based on that application, another sap analysis. So if you look at the price of fertiliser last year, inputs last year, and you look at the potential, what they are coming, do you know what I mean? It's a no-brainer to start looking at sap analysis.
And to move then to plant health, have you found with your examples of maybe through follow-up sap analysis, and balancing nutrients within the crop growing season, are you finding that's making plants healthier, and maybe there's scope to fine tune fungicide or
there is, but you know, we had the cereal problem. The problem with the cereal is kind of like what the guys say about the plough. You make one adjustment at a time. In cereals, you make an adjustment in the spring. Then you make another adjustment, another adjustment, another adjustment, another adjustment. You get to the harvest, you don't know which one worked, right? It's not like dairy. Dairy milks them this morning, milks them this evening, milks them. You get the trend very quickly. In cereals, it's a harder nut to crack, right? So, pulling a fungicide out is a brave move. Pulling nitrate, it's a brave move. But what you do need is the confidence. So, based on the experience of last year and the year before, yes, exactly what you're talking about in cereals, you will realise that things like insecticides, aphicides, things like that can be pulled. I've gone to zero aphicides, right? And my first eye-opener was the pea crop that I grow for human consumption. And I realised I had been applying aphicides to that before, but I had learned through the process that aphids have a very simple digestive system and can't digest complex sugars. And simply by adjusting the mineral makeup of the pea plant, having it healthier, that the aphid, while it landed on the crop and they were there, within 24 hours you afflict them, they rolled over and fell on the ground. And when I saw it with my own eyes, I said, that's amazing. And the aphids just left. They had arrived, but they'd left the blossoms within 24 hours. They'd left the blossoms, and I just said to myself, how do I transfer that from what I've learned in the pea crop into my cereal crops? So I would be looking at nutrient balancing for the like of BYDV in the autumn.
Yeah. Well done, Colm, and thanks for your time today. Hello, everyone. We're here today as part of BioFarm 2021 on the farm of Jonny and Naso Greene, outside the Tay in County Kildare. So I'll just ask Jonny to give us a moment's introduction on his farm, the family farm, and then we'll have a look at some of his soils.
Hi Robbie, thanks for that. Yeah, no, farming here with my father Nasa, mixed farm, many tillage crops, a few beef cattle, and been practicing conservation ag now for, I suppose, to different levels for about 20 years, and hoping to keep progressing as we go.
Jonny, we might start by having a look at the soil in this field.
Yeah, no problem. This is 20 plus years since it was last turned over with a moldboard plough. So we are getting a darker level at the top, which is more what you would see in, say, a long-term grassland. The critics of the system will say we're not actually adding more organic matter, we're just adding more to the top, but no more down here. But you see our worms here he is coming down. You know, sometimes you see leaf litter down here. You know, we see roots down here, there's going to be root exudates down here. So it's got to be putting it down deeper into the soil profile. You know, you look at the structure there, you know, your crumbly bits. You'd be delighted with that. Yeah. Delighted with that. And, no restriction. Again, the critics would say, we don't cultivate, we're going to get compaction. There is no restriction there to root growth. Look how that crumbles at what are we at, 8 inches? Just crumble, crumble, crumble. Bone dry.
And we've had, roughly what amount of rain last night, Jonny?
It was about 5 mil last night,
Yeah.
I'd say. But I mean, it is dry. It's been a very dry autumn, but
good infiltration.
great infiltration. And the less we touch the ground, the better the infiltration, the better we can take. The more protection we have about whatever the weather decides to do. I couldn't really give a flute anymore.
You mentioned earlier, Jonny, about the fact that, because we're in what we describe as, and what some people call a Monet cover crop, so all the colour, the vibrant colour. So we've got the sunflowers, oilseed, radish, you've got linseed in flower, you've got phacelia in flower, more some of the lower growing species like the tillage radish. But you spoke on some of the vetches, you spoke about this whole area. If you look at all the nitrogen, this is now saving from leaching, so you might just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, had I known the price of fertiliser was going to do what it has done, I would have added more legumes to the mix, but hindsight is a great thing. I don't like to add too many legumes to my cover crop mix because, one, I grow both peas and beans in the rotation, so you're always kind of mindful not to overdo it. Two, what you're looking for your cover crop to do is assimilate nitrogen as much as grow it. If this is, again, this going into malting barley, so I'm conscious of proteins next year, so I don't want this driven wild with nitrogen. I want to keep it balanced. And essentially for me, what the cover crop is doing, as well as, conserving nitrogen and stopping runoff or anything like that, is we're building humus, building organics in the soil. And that in itself will protect from anything. We're looking for resilience. And that's, I think, what we've built in 20 years. It's just simple resilience.
Yeah.
Learn from all the mistakes we've made, many mistakes. And most of the mistakes are made from doing things, not from not doing them. The hardest thing to do in this game is to not do things, to not add on a little bit more fertiliser, to not use the spray that's recommended, to not give it a run of a subsoiler, run of a disc, run of a something. The hardest thing to do at the start was to do nothing. Nowadays, we do very, very little to the ground. We take straw off, or we, in some situations, like in the schemes this year, we chop a bit of straw through the rotation, add a bit of organic matter where we can, organic manures, farmyard manures, things like that. And then just put seeds in the ground, and it basically goes from there. Here we are. No rocket science.
You've often said to me in the past, Jonny, about, a number of things. One was patience, learning patience.
Yeah.
The other is learning to become your own farmer again. But you gave a great example recently when we spoke, to tie in with you coaching the kids' rugby team, about heads up rugby. So if you could maybe just give just a brief few words on the concept of learning patience and developing that confidence on, and as you said, look, play the game that's in front of you.
I think what you have to farm with is farm with instinct. So every year throws you a different little bit of challenges. Like, I mean, the simple one, I suppose, this last April, I think we had frost nearly every morning in April. It was freezing. Zero growth. The conventional lads were telling us to, get our nitrogen out, or to get our growth regulator out in their crops. Whereas if you walked out, the simple thing I said, if you walk out in the field, you don't want to be there. It was freezing cold and raw. The plants didn't look happy, so the simplest thing you could do is hope that they would stay in hibernation for as long as possible. And you didn't want to wake them up with fertiliser, or you certainly didn't want to stress them out by adding a chemical loading. So you play the game as it unfolds, and that's your sport, whether it's soccer or anything. You play it as it happens out in front of you, and you try and feel what the crop wants, what the field wants, and you do that. You don't necessarily get that advice from the establishment or the newspapers out there. I think you have to play, you have to learn to farm yourself. You have to learn to make your own decisions, take responsibility. I mean, I think that's a big problem with farmers is, if you get something wrong, and even if you're advised to put something on, and you do it, and it doesn't work, I always said you get recommendations from agronomists, you don't get orders. But you have to, they're going with the standard. You then have to amend that to your field, your situation, your rotation, your soil type, and the other practices that you do in the farm. So yeah, basically heads up.
Yeah.
Play the game as it unfolds.
Good. And Jonny, I suppose you know your membership at Base Ireland, and some of the other involved with the Danu project as well. How important do you think it is? The more you see, the more you develop along yourself. It's there's farmer to farmers instead of maybe knowledge sharing as opposed to knowledge transfer. Can you again maybe give us a few of your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think anybody. I mean, we just spoke in the yard there about Twitter or forums and things like that as well. Anywhere you talk around the world about this subject, everybody has said it's farmer-led. We've always said there's just nothing in this game for industry. There's very little in this game for fertilizer companies, for machinery companies, for chemical companies, or might be. I always thought there should be great support from the seed companies, because there's what you have in this field is a lot of seed. I spend more money every year on cover crop seed than I do on cash crop seed. And I think the seed companies could wake up to that and do well out of it. But there's something in it for the farmer. There's something in it for the environment, the bees or the worms, or there's something in it for, protecting water, for protecting air, there's so many benefits to it. But the place there is no benefit is the industry. They don't like that. They've got to try and make a few pound too, but no longer at our expense, is the way I would see it. So I think, and when it comes to the, Danu, the project, we're here today because we're involved with Danu. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put maybe a few numbers on it, try and get a few trials going, and we're learning. We're learning from getting results. We're learning from getting no results. And we're learning as we go. But then when it comes to, other groups, discussion groups, be it Base or anything like that, I mean, that's all about just sharing again, like I said, it's going to be farmers-led. We will be the drivers. There's pollinator on that. We will be the beneficiaries. And it's just, we can share it amongst ourselves, and that's what we try and do. I mean, it's a group, the Base group's a great group, because it's, someone asked me recently what you have to do to become a member, and that's basically is to contribute. That's what we always said, that, everybody can bring something to the party, and we all learn from that.
Yeah. No, and you mentioned, you just saw, just walking into the field 10 minutes ago, Jonny, the big thing I think that struck us all was, once you move through the crop, the amount of insects and other, we'll say, forms of biodiversity just moving around, even plenty of earthworm activity, a couple of little mammals floating around. So, again, it's, as you say, this type of farming, conservation ag, regenerative agriculture, biological farming, all these systems, what they seem to be, they're definitely part of a win-win for everyone, not just, as you say, the farmer, society in general, the environment, water quality, which is becoming a very big topic of conversation here in Ireland at the moment. So, I suppose, maybe where would you see leadership and policy? Where could they maybe help out more or learn more about these systems? How do you see those guys maybe helping us out or helping this system out?
Well, I mean, I think there's huge benefits in this system. I mean, this actually, where we're standing, is a great example, because we are on a riverbed here, an old riverbed here, and when the water table gets very high, sometimes the river will break out the banks and will come across this spot here. If it flowed through here today, the water would be crystal clear coming out the far side. If this was a cultivated, ploughed, you would have a huge amount of soil erosion going out that gate down the far side. I don't want that. That's my fertility going away. The water companies don't want that, or nobody wants that. That doesn't benefit anybody. So that's what we're looking to prevent. So I think a lot of those guys need to come on farms like this, and they need to understand better what we're doing. A lot of people might look for proof it saves this or it saves that, but I mean, you just have to stand in the field to see that there's nothing wrong here. There's no negatives to this. It's so self-explanatory. It's as simple as that.
One of the big positives when I find when we, you walk into a conservation agriculture field, a regenerative agriculture field, involving cover crops, you know, minimising disturbance of soil, introducing all the diversity, is the fact that you could literally walk across the field in your shoes. So to be fair, that's all carbon retention, carbon sequestration, and I suppose they're, again, topics that are being more openly discussed at the moment. But you've been on this journey a long time, Jonny. Somebody new starting off, maybe looking at BioFarm, somebody new starting off or wants to start on it, any suggestions, any advice?
I think the most advice I can give is try to do less bad things, try to do more good things. Again, what I've learned on the journey is, I think I'm repeating myself now, is that I've spent more time regretting things I have done than things I haven't done. And conventional thinking has told me to do stuff, and sometimes I've, through, you know, being under time pressure, I've relented and said, oh well, we better just do that. And 9 times out of 10, it's a negative. So I think we have to be, as farmers, as the agriculture industry, with everything that's going on, climate change, CAP reform, everything, we have to be braver. So I think being a little bit braver is another bit of advice. You know, you see members of the groups we've spoken about rising all the time. People are seeing the results. And I think there's enough guys, you know, maybe when we started 20 years ago, there wasn't an awful lot going on. But there's enough guys practicing now, huge success, that we know it works. There's no more issue here. This system works. You know, some people will say, well, this is a dry farm. Oh, it's easy for you. There's many people, Meath, Cork, on tough land and wetter climates, wetter areas than this, who are making this work. I think the other thing, you know, so much is driven in tillage farming. I'm sure it's the same with milk yield or, you know, production of beef or anything like that, is so many are obsessed with output. Whereas the big financial benefits, and I don't really like talking, and we spoke in the yard about this, I don't really like talking too much about finance. Of course it's important, no one's doubting that. But if finance is your driving motivator, I don't think you'll get it right. I think if you get all the steps in conservation agriculture right, you will reap the rewards financially. But you have to be in it for the right motivating factors. If you're in it, you know, to reduce compaction with deeper rooting plants, improve your soils, build your humus, percolate your heavy rainfall better. If you get all that right, everything else is simple and the economics look after themselves. If you're driven by a spreadsheet, and yes, all businesses have to be, but it's not the be-all and end-all. I think if you cut an input because it's costing you money, you might need that input. If you cut an input because the soil can live without it, then it won't cost you money. Does that make sense? So I think guys need to be a bit braver, and it'll work. Yeah.
Like you just as you meant, like it's like Gary Zimmer would say, you must earn the right.
Yes.
So you get in tune with it. You take slow steps. You know, and I think one of the things you've always said when people ask you about your farming system is it's literally very simple. I plant a seed. So I suppose even for people to start off by maybe trying a cover crop in one field on the farm or one half field, give it a couple of seasons. Yeah. And try, as you know, maybe as we all know, get them sown earlier rather than later. You get far more success from that. So, but I think it's even just to look around us today, Jonny. Like it's you know, I think even your steps over the years have gotten braver. So there's far more species in this mix. You know, over the years, people tend to start small and basic and move from there. But I think that's just a testament to the learning experiences that you as a farmer have encountered over the years, and you know the positives it's having on the soil.
We've learned by doing, and I think that's the best thing. I mean, you know, you can tune into BioFarm and you can listen to all the speakers, and you'll all hopefully pick something up from everybody. But the only way you're really going to learn is to do it. And you know, we always said, you know, start at the field out the back of the farm and do 1 year, and then maybe next year you do 2 fields, and then before you know it, you're doing the whole lot. And you know, it's an addictive type of farming, and God, it's a simpler type of farming. It really is. You know, work-life balance is better. All this sort of stuff is better. There's so many benefits to it.
You're more connected to nature, and you
nature
feel
does
that
the work for
farmers,
us, I think. You know, and you know, I often think when I look back, we were very conventional here, not that long ago. It's been a 20-year journey, but each time, every year, we're getting less conventional as we go. Maybe I'm further from conventional than I think I am. I always still think I'm probably closer to conventional than maybe going full organic or anything like that. And we're somewhere in between where I'm not exactly sure. You learn by doing, and you just got to try. You got to try, even if that's in your vegetable patch. Out the backyard,
Yeah. Well, Jonny, thanks a million.
You're welcome.
Great to have the opportunity to visit the farm. As always, I feel we learn a lot when we come down and visit yourself, and you're a man of broad thinking, and you're always willing to learn, so no, much appreciated.
No, you're very welcome, and I think the more we learn, the more we have to learn, and I think that's half the secret, isn't it?
I was going to finish off by saying your advice was a bit like, the advice on biological farming, getting started and getting into it, is very much like the Irish mammy advice. Do less of the bad things and do more of the good things.
Exactly, that's it, yeah. That's it, exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Well, that was, I think, a really outstanding in their own field, you'd have to say. And we're joined on stage now by Colm, welcome Colm, and thank you very much for a really illuminating discussion, I think, from both yourself and Jonny from similar but obviously differing perspectives. So where do you start with it? I mean, what's the bottom line for you? Is it a financial one? Is it stewardship? Is it all of the above?
I suppose initially, it was financial. I was running the farm. It was the family farm. I was running it. It was to make a profit in it. But ever since I was a child, and I loved Robbie's talking about poaching. I mean, I was the biggest poacher in Ireland was a young lad. You know what I mean? And
I'm going to have to stop you there and ask you what is poaching. Excuse my ignorance. I saw this come up earlier. I said, am I the only one in the room who doesn't know what poaching is?
Well, when someone in old God's time said that an animal belonged to them because he was from across the water, and you said, no, I'm an Irishman, that's mine.
Okay.
And you go and you take it. Or maybe a salmon or something like that. In old God's time, you might have took the salmon on the landlord. You were the poacher. But no one recognised the fact that he had no more entitlement to it than you had.
I understand.
So it's poaching.
Okay,
Sorry, I know the relevance of it is important, but whatever. I love these questions at the BioFarm conference.
Curious and having a look.
Having a look.
Up our country, we call kids when they be in the wrong room or in the wrong press to be poaching. So, we'd be more law-abiding than the Kildare boys.
Well, I said I've expanded my vocabulary already today, so this is all good. This is all good.
We could talk history all day, but I suppose the love of the land is one thing.
Yeah.
That's it, deep in every one of our hearts.
Yeah.
Making a living, supporting community is a phenomenal part of everyone's life. The farming community is very, very much of that. And I was talking to John this morning, and we just come up, we're just talking about stuff that Jack Nolan was talking about the other day, and the level of anxiety that's in farming at the moment because you're being beaten from all different angles. There's certainly the farmers are severely in debt, and are looking at the gas crisis across Europe and the implications of that with regard to fertiliser supplies for next year. Those guys and girls are, they're either anxious or questioning or clamouring for information or seeking out information. And, we're all these people, Jonny. Every one of us are these people in the community. So when we want to go on a journey like what Dave Wallace brought regarding I was a very easy poach when he came, because I was already there, you know what I mean? And, what the Dano process brought to the 12 guys, and indeed in return back to the guys to set up in part, was a reflection of the level of achievement that has been
attained in farming over the years. Someone used the analogy this morning that, when they were starting out in education, maybe multi-farm, the vast majority of the farmers didn't know how to read or write. And maybe it was the youngest guy that was kept home, or whatever was kept, the guy that didn't make it was kept home. That's the history. But the level of capacity within farming in Ireland at the moment is phenomenal. Whether it's in base or whether it's the fact that the like of Dave Wallace can come along to a group of farmers and run a couple of classes, brief them up and get a handle on this. And it's also a reflection of the question that was put to you this morning, Rob. Where's the role of Chazak in all of this? There's a role for Chazak. Well, it's not the only one. The capacity of the people on that floor out there, and the capacity of the people that are watching this conference across the world, we only need to harness those, marry together with the competence and confidence that we're acquiring ourselves. And the more you watch Jonny, and the more you watch Gareth, and the more you watch Robbie, and the more we all watch together, the more confidence we get. And the more confidence we get, it's this snowballing. So we're getting further down this line we get, the more we are developing. And we are pathfinders, but we're not educators. We're coachers. We're just talking to our neighbour. Like the number of people that say to me, "Geez, Colm, that's mad." What in the name of God, if you saw one out there and said it's a cover crop or it's this, that, and the other. Or one particular guy, when he walked in, I had all the lovely chicory and plantain and everything came up through the grass seeds. And he said, "Oh, Jesus," he says, you may spray that with Roundup. He said, that's terrible. And I said, I had to stop him. And said, no, this is the chicory and plantain. A couple of years later, the guy sold on it. It's, you know what I mean? But it's that. And the information will just speed through the community.
And can I suggest as well, and if I can put this one to Jonny, who's on the line as well, as you said, farmers are under pressure, whether it's through debt or whether feeling pressure about climate or feeling like the bad guys, right? This is such a good news story to come out of farming. And I don't mean an Origin Greene marketing thing. This is literally a grassroots good news story that actually, I would say, as somebody outside of this, needs to be talked about in public an awful lot more. And obviously conferences like this are great, but it's amazing how little of this is still percolating, for example, into the farming press, which is completely dominated by the usual ding-dong battles from week to week. So I just think, again, stepping from the outside in, these are terrific stories these are exemplar stories, and I think even for more farmers to hear about this, to have that confidence that John spoke about earlier, the confidence to feel able to embrace change and not to be afraid, not to be, if you like, chemically dependent, to feel that you're trapped in a system that I think Jonny made it the point during his thing that the people no longer making money out of his system are the input sellers. They mightn't be happy about it, but they're the people who are no longer making money. But you guys are.
Yeah, well, if you give the example, we saw for years and years and years, certainly within the community we were working in, the amount of people that we would love to have seen not to be commuting in now Dublin. And we were told, you can't stop that. You have to commute, you have to commute, you have to commute. COVID came along, bang, stopped. Right? Everyone could work at home. Who didn't like it? The business, corporate, pension funds, all those. They didn't like it. But the people loved it.
Yes.
It was human. It was humane. People were at home. Children were with their parents. Next thing we see something similar happening in farming. You can't work without the niter. You can't work without the niter. Bang. Stop, dead. Let's see where it'll be in 2 years' time. Right? And let's see what this generates by way of an enthusiasm or an attraction or a willingness or whatever to change. And this could be a very fortuitous occasion to give more momentum to what we've been trying to do, and a greater acceptance of the need to change. Like how do you offer the carrot to a guy that doesn't believe what we were about? And I was thinking about this coming up in the car this morning, and we're going to be inundated, and people are going to be inundated with phone calls, and the Chazak officers are going to be inundated. What the hell do I do next spring? And I'm tempted to say to the guys, listen, just cool the jets a little bit. When it comes to next spring, think about maybe just warming the biology in the soil. And you know, and that's a very kind of I said, well, hold on. You might have something like as soon as the cows start calving, you know, and after the beast has said you have a flush of milk, you have enough calves to drink it, so you have spare milk. That's not ready to go in the bull tank. Mix up a bit of that, maybe 20 litres of that, 100 litres of water, put on a hectare of ground, a little bit of boron, a bit of seaweed or something like that. Just start. That is when you were going to go with your nitre before. Hold off. Just warm the ground. Let it become. And that kind of cushioning information coming from people and sharing. You say, well, it mightn't necessarily solve his problem. But you know what you have? Like the poacher. He's sniffing at the trap. He's sniffing. He's coming sniffing. Do you know what I mean? So now he's going to be a very, very easy guy to move on in the next stage and the next stage and the next stage after that. Now, I really would love to know what Jonny, if you're on.
Can we get Jonny in?
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Jonny?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll talk about, say, the base group there, and we never went looking for members. We never put out an advertise to say, you know, guys, come to us, this is where it's all happening. Because I think at the start, the belief had to be that the guys had to want to come on the journey. You know, you have to want to do this. It's a bit like I was saying in my piece there about, you know, your motivating factors. You have to want to do this, and some different people have different reasons for that. But if finance or if the sudden spike of fertilizer is your reason, and it is a reason to go, but it might set you a little bit on the wrong path. And some guys went into min-till because they wanted a bigger tractor, they wanted to cover more acres. Whereas the real reason to join it was to improve your soil. And then everything looked after itself. I think, you know, Robbie was asked a question about the research agencies. I think leadership does need to come from certain areas. I think mostly, I think a lot of the conventional frown upon us, whether they're threatened by us or not, I don't know, but I do think slowly we start to come around. But I just think lads need to look at this, they need to realise it's very possible, and it is a step-by-step process. Robbie mentioned there somewhere about earning the right, and just making little steps forward, and people will come.
Okay. Now, I'm going to take a couple of questions that have been emailed in. One from Aaron Marr, and this is to either Colm or Jonny. How has your workload changed since you transitioned to this system? So maybe while you're on, Jonny, do you want to start with that one? How has your workload been affected?
Well, I mean, for a start, hugely. When I came home to farm in 1999, I mean, we're farming a very large farm. We had a couple of employees. Now we're down to kind of, you know, 1.5 labour units here, 2 labour units, where we would have been 5 20 years ago. It's a different type of work on the farm. There's a lot more coaching going on, but a lot less hours in the tractor. Okay. So, you know, someone said to me once, you shortcut. So when we do things, we do right. So therefore, we spend a lot of time in the field, looking around. We do the research, and then we act. Okay.
Maybe I put the same question then to Colm.
Yeah, well, my situation is slightly different. I'm at home alone, so I use contracting services for a lot of the work that goes on at home. But what do I enjoy most? I have more pictures of bumblebees, butterflies, wasps on my phone in the last 2 years than I'd say David Attenborough ever had. Right? I have pictures of mushrooms grown in land that was in tillage for hundreds of years, and I'm saying, not since the beginning of time have mushrooms grown out in that field. the biology is coming back.
But you obviously feel very good about this too.
I do, but it becomes part of your life. You know what I mean? I don't mean to be rude, but if you got down years ago and you went behind the wheel to pee in the hedge, that's all you did. Now you get down to pee behind the wheel at the title and take out the phone, you take a picture of a fucking bee in the hedge. You're standing there with the phone in your hand. Because that's the richness that comes from an awful lot of this, right? Yeah. And it's the life, it's connect, it's the balance.
Connecting back with the land, because...
Yeah, it is, yeah. And it in a strange way, it rehabilitates that anxiety, you know, to get out on the farm and walk around. And then during COVID, I had to share my farm with everyone else that was out walking the road. Right. And stopping. And the road was a long mile from the moat down. It was thronged with people. And you have to look at their well-being and what my farm means to them. And if they're looking at the hedgerow and they see stuff and they do that, you know, you get great satisfaction from the fact that they appreciate the move that they're making, and the cover crops. You know, like you saw the Monet, you call it in Jonny's. You know, and our cover crops, again, to pick up on points before that were made this morning, we have a different range of cover crops that seem to thrive in our soil. Yeah. And, you know, people just love... I get photographs of bumblebees on our cover crops from strangers, send them to me. And, you know, I think it's a lovely balance to it all. And it takes some of the tension away. And it builds a relationship with the community that when they hear this diatribe, that they read in the paper about the farmer being the worst. I know there's 1,000 people live near me who don't believe I am. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, and that obviously means a great deal to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to take another question from Rachel Hardiman, and again, whoever would like to handle it, says, how can this sort of pioneering practitioner research dealing with multiple variables, complex systems, how can it be brought into parity with current lab-based paradigms?
No, Christ, Johnny, that's yours.
Well,
you know...
I was giving it to Johnny Greene, sorry, John.
Or indeed.
Well,
no, yeah, I'm quite happy to take that one, John, because, you know, I think, you know, there could be a movement to try and overcomplicate this and bring it into the lab. And, you know, we mentioned with Danu there, we're trying to put a few figures on it. We're trying a little bit of this and that. But I wouldn't be a big fan of proving everything in the lab. This is a feel-good story. It's definitely positive in many, many different ways. We're ticking a huge amount of environmental boxes. We haven't ticked them all yet, but we're ticking a huge amount of boxes. So I don't think there's a need to get overcomplicated by it. So that'd be my answer to that question.
I think that's fair. Now, at this point, if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to come in, there's a gentleman here and John as well. So maybe if we could start over there. There you go.
John Pawsey, my question is to Jonny. You made a really interesting point about actually not putting beans in your cover crops because obviously, you know, adding... I've always been a proponent of saying actually don't put anything in your cover crops. But I'm just sort of wondering about that now, and it was a really interesting presentation from you, is that actually when you have lots of different plant species within a cover crop, actually, because of the different thing that starts happening, and I'm not wanting to overcomplicate things here, but because the different things are happening within that sort of multi-species situation, actually, should we really actually worry about it? Because what we're doing is we're comparing something that's happening within a cover crop to a subsequent monoculture. And I'm noticing on my own farm is that our volunteer bits and pieces always seems to do slightly better than my cover crop. So, yeah, I'm sort of looking for an excuse to put them in. I just wonder what your thoughts were.
Yeah, well, absolutely, John, and I was on your farm with Base a few years ago and very much enjoyed that, so thank you. But absolutely 100% agree. I read somewhere or somebody said maybe no more than 10 or 15% of the mix should be, say, a legume if you have other legumes in the thing, and same maybe with brassicas if you have oilseed rape in your rotation. But exactly what you're saying I agree with. You know, the conventional thinking would be if I had some brassicas in my cover crops that the sky will fall in when I'm going to grow oilseed rape. Yet, it hasn't happened. I haven't seen more diseases on my cash crop, legumes, peas or beans, because I've had vetches, clovers, or at times peas or beans in my cover crop. So I absolutely agree with you, John. I'm not worried about it in the least. I try to find the middle ground there by not overdoing the legumes and not overdoing the brassicas in my cover crops. I mean, I'm a big fan, and you saw that field there was mainly linseed, which is flax, dahlias. There was a bit of buckwheat in it, but it wasn't visible. Sunflowers. I try to pick plants that are as far out as the bulk of my cover crop to dominate there rather than the legumes. But the one main thing I would always say, that was a cover crop before cereal, is I keep cereals out of it in that situation. And that's a pest carryover thing. But I'm with you all the way there, John.
Yeah, we've time just for one more question, and there's a gentleman here in the back who we're going to take again from the floor, if we might.
I direct a question there to Jonny. Does he envisage getting a premium for his grains, or does he expect that because he's more microbial action in the soil, that he's got a higher density, nutrient dense product, or is he happy to sit back and take keep the benefits in the farm and say, I'm sequestering more carbon? Or is that a road he'd hope to go to get paid for his carbon sequestration? Just interested in his thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes, John Posey covered the getting paid for carbon, so I'll leave that one alone. When it comes to a premium for our products, and again, it's a difficult one. At the moment, I'm not looking for anything in particular. I've spoken to a few people and there's been a few things about selling the story that goes along with, the good news story about carbon sequestration or clean water and all that. There's a little bit of chat going on in the background there, but I'm not particularly keen to get into a certification model like there is with organics, because there's a huge amount of hoops to jump through and another workload involved in that. And at this particular moment in time, I'm not interested in that. It would be fantastic to get a bit of a premium. Maybe more preferential market access might become available to guys who can prove the good news story. But for now, with certification, I'm not there yet.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Jonny. Now, we're absolutely out of time on this session, so I just want to finish up by thanking both Colm and Jonny and Robbie, our reporter, for an excellent piece. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes with Josiah Meldrum. Thanks very much.
That's okay, that'll go all right.
Hello.